Before he became the most feared professor at Hogwarts, the half-blood prince, a brilliant potioneer with an unmatched mastery of the dark arts, and a man forever marked by the rivalry that defined his youth, and by a love he could never let go. In this episode, we follow the long and extraordinary life of one of the most complex wizards of the last century, Severus Snape. Greetings, my dear wizards, witches, muggles, and squibs. What you see in my hands is, to the untrained eye, a rather unremarkable school textbook. Battered, scribbled upon, margins filled to the brim with corrections, spells, and whispered secrets. The kind of book that, had I turned in at school, would have earned me a very stern look from my professor and a letter sent home to my parents. And yet, this copy of advanced potion making belongs to a boy who signed himself simply the Half-Blood Prince. A boy who grew into one of the most complex, most debated, most misunderstood figures in the entire history of the wizarding world. Today, we follow his dark story, from the very beginning to the very end. A difficult childhood in Spinner's End, a rivalry with the Marauders that left scars deeper than any hex, a love that never faded, a dark mark burnt into his arm, and a double life, carried in absolute silence for years at the cost of everything he had. He also invented a spell at 15 that I won't be demonstrating today for legal reasons and general safety. This is the life of Severus Snape, and I promise you, by the end of this episode, you will not see him the same way again. Lights, music, magic. If you enjoy our journeys through the wizarding world and wish to support this project, there is something very simple you can do. Leave a like and subscribe to the Spellbook Chronicles. For you, it costs nothing. For us, it truly makes all the difference. Dumbledore never had to worry about the algorithm. Thank you from the bottom of our wizarding hearts.
Of smokestacks, loneliness, and Sectumsempra.
Like many great stories in the wizarding world, this one also begins with an important pure-blood legacy. The Prince family. It was 1930 when Eileen, the eldest daughter, was born. Although no details are certain, it seems that Eileen grew up in a hostile environment, despite her family's wealth. Her father and relatives had hoped desperately for a male heir, a hope her mother had not been able to fulfill. While the world was engulfed in the global wizarding war, led by the dark wizard Gellert Grindelwald, Eileen, like every young witch of her age, began attending Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, where she was presumably sorted into Slytherin House. Despite her excellent magical abilities, Eileen struggled to make many friends during her school years, partly due to the introversion developed in her childhood and partly due to her fascination with the dark arts. In general, other students saw Eileen as both dangerous and odd, a sentiment reinforced by her passion for Hogwarts' least popular extracurricular activity, gobstones. This ancient wizarding game resembles Muggle marbles, except that each time a player loses a point, the winning stone sprays a foul-smelling liquid onto the loser's face. Eileen's enthusiasm for the game was so great that she became captain of the school Gobstones team in her 5th year, as well as serving as president of the Hogwarts Gobstone Club. Years passed, and with the end of school came the end of the small world the young witch had built for herself. A world of her own, far from home and her father's hatred. It's unclear what exactly happened, but it's likely that after graduating, she left her family and found a job in the Muggle world to escape their control. It was then, after moving to the Midlands of England, that she met Tobias Snape.
Hello.
A young man who was exceptionally kind to her.
My name is Tobias.
A Muggle.
Eileen.
Perhaps enchanted by an affection she had never known before, Eileen unexpectedly fell in love. Months passed, as did seasons, until the two decided to wed. Her choice to marry a Muggle man may have led to her being disowned by the Prince family, much like Andromeda Tonks, who was cast out by the House of Black for the same reason. Due to Tobias's working-class job, they were forced to move from the countryside to Spinner's End, a shabby suburb of Copeworth, near a dirty river and full of dilapidated houses, disused factories, and broken-down street lamps. Life was not easy there. Tobias's factory job brought in meager wages, and Eileen struggled to find work in that world, feeling out of place and beginning to harbor a faint but growing resentment toward Muggles. Likewise, Tobias began to resent her for her passivity. Things worsened when Eileen unexpectedly became pregnant with an unwanted child.
I want to keep it.
Despite her husband's opposition, the witch chose to keep the baby. Perhaps her son would be her salvation from that meaningless reality. And so, in January 1960, Severus Snape was born. The boy, just like his mother before him, grew up in a world devoid of paternal affection. Tobias, who had started drinking during those years and was becoming increasingly aggressive, hated the little brat, who, in his view, had ruined his life. Severus's childhood was plagued by the tumultuous, explosive atmosphere in the home, with his parents often fighting. Tobias would shout at Eileen and may have been physically abusive as well. The witch, despite her initial longing for motherhood, grew increasingly depressed, and as time went on, she struggled to show much affection toward the child, neglecting him more and more. While some magical scholars believe that psychological stress during early childhood can lead to the repression of one's magical powers, it is also theorized that the opposite effect can occur. Perhaps for this reason, young Severus, long before his 10th birthday, began to show an exceptional aptitude for magic, demonstrating a natural talent like no other. It is likely that Eileen, noticing her son's incredible abilities, began secretly teaching him out of her husband's sight, as Tobias had never truly understood or known much about their magical nature.
We have to talk.
Thus, young Severus, even before receiving his acceptance letter to Hogwarts, had already learned high-level spells and secrets of the dark arts. It would therefore come as no surprise when Sirius Black later claimed that Snape, when he arrived at school, knew more hexes than half of the 7th-year students. In addition to this, the child soon demonstrated a remarkable ability in legilimency, a rare skill that allowed him to navigate the intricate layers of another person's mind and emotions. A wizard who practiced this art was known as a legilimens, capable of uncovering thoughts, secrets, and feelings hidden deep within others. It was during a summer of those gray and difficult years in Spinner's End that Severus happened to notice a girl of his own age who lived nearby, just a few steps from the neighborhood, catching his attention. After watching her for some time, Severus noticed her evident magical abilities, and it was then that he gathered the courage to approach her. The girl, he discovered, was named Lily Evans.
My name's Lily.
It didn't take long for the two of them to become more than just great friends, almost inseparable despite the hostility from Lily's older sister Petunia, who on several occasions had tried to discourage her from associating with that poor boy who dresses like a ragamuffin. But Severus and Lily, together, had found in their friendship a place where they could take refuge without feeling different or wrong. Their bond grew even stronger the day they both received their acceptance letters to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry.
What's this?
And so, on September 1st, 1971, Severus and Lily finally arrived at King's Cross Station in London to board the Hogwarts Express. During the journey to the castle, the two friends had the opportunity to meet two other first-year students who were anything but friendly, James Potter and Sirius Black. The two began to pick a fight with Severus over a difference of opinion about which house at Hogwarts was the best to be sorted into. Severus, proud of his mother Eileen's heritage, strongly defended the value of Slytherin, a house that had hosted some of the most exceptional wizards in magical history, like Merlin. The two responded by saying that only dark wizards end up in Slytherin. They began mocking him for his nose, while Lily tried unsuccessfully to defend him. That first hostile encounter on the train would lay the foundations for an antagonism that would define the fate of the four for the rest of their lives, a destiny that continued to unfold that very first evening at the castle during the sorting ceremony. While Severus, as expected, was sorted into Slytherin, with little hesitation from the hat, He had never imagined the possibility that his best friend Lily would be taken from him when she was sorted into Gryffindor. Seeing her smile at the same table as those two jerks from the train, Severus once again felt in that moment more alone than ever in his life. From his first year, Severus excelled in defense against the dark arts, thanks to his innate talent and the knowledge passed down from his mother, Eileen. He also proved to be an exceptional potions master, probably the best student of his year, alongside Lily, with whom he remained a close friend, despite being sorted into different houses. However, unlike Lily, whose talent was immediately noticed by the clever and ambitious Professor Slughorn, always on the lookout for promising young students, who invited her to join the exclusive Slug Club, Severus remained in the shadows at Hogwarts, despite his objectively exceptional abilities. Just like his mother, Severus was an introverted young man who struggled to socialize and make friends, preferring to spend more time with books and scrolls rather than drinking butterbeer at the Three Broomsticks, like that herd of sheep. This tendency towards introversion, masked as an overt sense of superiority and disdain towards his peers, especially Muggles, only strengthened the contrast and rivalry between him and James Potter, who, along with Sirius Black and two other Gryffindors, Remus Lupin and Peter Pettigrew, had become the most popular and arrogant quartet in all of Hogwarts, the Marauders. Potter, the typical popular and arrogant student, took great pleasure in mocking Severus publicly, often calling him Snivelous Snape. Thankfully, Lily, despite sharing the same Gryffindor house, could not condone his behavior. James's egotism and cruelty in tormenting Severus were, in her eyes, completely unacceptable. It was during these years that Severus Snape, almost playfully, began to develop the idea of a new identity, a secret one, the Half-Blood Prince. A pseudonym that, of course, refers to his magical bloodline, the one from his mother, Prince. An interesting and curious parallel to another Slytherin, Tom Marvolo Riddle, both eager to create a new name, a new identity to hide behind, so they could rid themselves of their Muggle heritage, the part of themselves they could never face each time they looked in the mirror, their fathers. As the Half-Blood Prince, Severus secretly began experimenting with magic, altering spells, enhancing their effects, and even creating entirely new ones, curses mostly. Levicorpus, which grabbed the victim by the ankle and dangled them upside down. Muffliato, which filled the ears of anyone nearby with an unidentifiable buzzing sound. And then there was Langlock, Liberacorpus, and another hex that caused toenails to grow at an unnaturally fast rate. In addition to the spells, meticulously recorded by Severus in his copy of Advanced Potion Making, he had, of course, perfected the procedures for several potions present in the textbook, enhancing their effects. Among these were the Draught of Living Death, the Poison Antidote, and the Elixir to Induce Euphoria. Much can be said about Severus Snape, but nothing will ever change the fact that to accomplish what he did, he was undoubtedly a genius of magic. But of all his creations, there is one that is as brutal as it is lethal. Sectumsempra, a curse that tore apart its target and caused severe bleeding. So dreadful that many considered it, though unofficially, to be the fourth unforgivable curse. Blood spurted from Malfoy's face and chest, as though he had been slashed with an invisible sword. He staggered backward and collapsed onto the waterlogged floor with a great splash, his wand falling from his limp right hand. Slipping and staggering, Harry got to his feet and plunged toward Malfoy, whose face was now shining scarlet, his white hands scrabbling at his blood-soaked chest.
Oh, my valiant adventurers, I bring you news that shines brighter than any Loomis. 3 enchanted tiers: Curious Wanderer, Enchanted Explorer, and Master Adventurer. The room of requirement? Nothing but a broom cupboard in comparison. With us, you'll gain early access to every episode, a secret Discord server to keep you ahead of everyone else, and that's not all. Priority replies to your comments, a direct channel to help you choose new content together, and even exclusive wallpapers taken from each episode. And it doesn't stop there. For the bravest among you, extra videos with my director's notes and reflections on the episodes already released. Because, let's be honest, you can never get enough of your dashing wizard adventure, Quentin Pezzato. Click join below for all the details. Joining the Spellbook family is a small gesture that supports our journey and allows us to bring content truly worthy of our audience. So thank you sincerely from the bottom of our hearts for being here. And you muggles listening in, I beg you tell me, what on Merlin's beard is a Discord server supposed to be?
Of Gryffindors, Slytherins, and filthy Mudbloods.
It is highly likely that Snape, not only for pleasure and pure ambition, conceived many of his curses as a defense against the constant attacks from the Marauders. Indeed, the group never missed an opportunity to pick a fight or mock him under the guidance of Patricia Rakepick, a fifth-year student known for her cunning and her propensity for breaking the rules. Thus, Severus began to take pleasure in trying to thwart, by any means possible, the endless pranks of Patricia and the Marauders. One night, while following Patricia, he discovered her obsessive search for the cursed vaults, 5 legendary hidden rooms at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, each vault shielded by a different curse placed upon it. Some alleged that the vaults housed priceless treasures, such as gold, prophecies, and other powerful magical artifacts dating back to before the school was founded, while others believed they contained dark magic. Their origin is uncertain, and it is possible they predated the founding of the school, but for many, this was nothing more than a legend. Certainly not for Patricia, who, when presenting her theory on the real existence of the cursed vaults, was dismissed. Young Snape, however, was not so certain of this judgment. Seeing her as uncommonly ambitious for a Gryffindor, and he recognized far from stupid, he eventually began to question her motives and intentions regarding the vaults, ultimately perceiving her as a threat to the school and everyone within the castle. A mystery that Snape would only solve many years later as a potions master. But that's something we'll return to shortly. As a result of these events and Patricia's involvement, the rivalry between Snape and the Marauders became even more intense. It was in this context that Severus began to associate with some of his fellow Slytherins, including Narcissa Black, Evan Rosier, Avery, Mulciber, and Wilkes.
And he's Mulciber.
In the Slytherin common room, the group would spend many nights debating the supremacy of purebloods and the inferiority of Muggleborns, fantasizing about a utopian world and the victory of the Dark Lord, who would turn the tide of the wizarding world once the war was won.
Snape?
Among these Slytherins, one in particular took Severus under his wing, earning him great respect. A fifth-year prefect, Lucius Malfoy, scion of his noble house. Due to his new associations, the relationship between Severus and Lily began to deteriorate more and more. Lily could sense that something was changing in Severus. The solitude and repressed anger were turning him into someone she no longer recognized. One afternoon in the spring of their 5th year, Severus was engrossed in reading, sitting quietly by the shore of the Black Lake. Suddenly, James Potter and the Marauders appeared, furious over yet another tip-off from Snape to the caretaker Argus Filch. Severus barely had time to react.
Lever Corpus!
James shouted, using one of the spells created by the half-blood prince. The spell turned Severus upside down, exposing his underwear and humiliating him in front of numerous students, including Lily.
Stop it.
She stepped in to defend Severus, but this only made things worse. In an attempt to regain his dignity, Severus, humiliated and angry, lashed out at James, and, in a moment of reckless fury, called Lily a filthy mudblood, deeply wounding her. This would forever be Severus's worst memory. That evening, Mary MacDonald heard about Severus's plan to spend the night outside the entrance to Gryffindor Tower, waiting to apologize to Lily for calling her such a hurtful name. She quickly informed her friend, who, despite her still raw pain, forced herself to leave the dormitory to meet her once close companion. When Lily finally appeared, Severus's heart leapt with hope. He didn't waste a second, pleading for her forgiveness, desperately trying to explain himself. But Lily's eyes were filled with hurt, and before she could even think of forgiving him, there was something she had to know.
Is it true?
Quietly, she asked him if it was true,
Severus.
if he truly planned to join the Death Eaters, to serve the Dark Lord once they left school. Severus paused, the weight of her question heavy in the silence that hung between them. He searched for an answer, something that might lessen her disappointment, but in the end, he couldn't bring himself to deny it. His silence spoke louder than any excuse he could muster. In that moment, Lily's expression changed. The sadness in her gaze shifted to something resolute, as though she was seeing him clearly for the first time. She realized that no matter how much she had tried to reach him, no matter how many years they had shared as friends, Severus couldn't or wouldn't change the path he had chosen, even for her. A tear slipped down her cheek, and she turned away, her heart heavy. For Lily, this was the end.
Goodbye.
Their friendship, once so deep, was over.
Severus.
The days at Hogwarts passed, as grey as they had always been at Spinner's End. It was by chance that Severus one day, intrigued by Remus Lupin's monthly disappearances, witnessed Madame Pomfrey taking the boy to the Shrieking Shack during a full moon through a secret passage beneath the Whomping Willow. But Sirius Black, eager for revenge, since he and James had lost their spots on the Gryffindor Quidditch team due to Severus's incident at the Black Lake, took advantage of Severus's curiosity and, as a joke, told him that the trick to getting past the Whomping Willow was to poke the knot at its base. The boy, following Sirius's instructions innocently, was nearly at the Shrieking Shack when James pulled him back just in time. At great personal risk, James saved Severus from certain death at the hands of Remus in his werewolf form. However, Severus stubbornly refused to believe that his old rival had acted out of goodwill, assuming instead that Potter had saved him only to avoid expulsion, and he loathed the idea of being indebted to him. Albus Dumbledore swore Severus to secrecy, but now Severus understood the true nature of Remus. By their 7th year, James Potter had shed much of his immaturity and arrogance, becoming someone Lily could finally see herself with. After years of resistance, she agreed to start dating him. Yet despite his growth, James's animosity towards Severus remained as fierce as ever. Sirius often remarked that Severus had always been a special case for James, a rivalry that ran deeper than any ordinary schoolboy grudge. However, Severus's continued associations with students who were either sympathizers or outright supporters of the Dark Lord didn't help his already strained relationship with the Marauders, or with Lily, for that matter.
Okay, Potter.
As James and her relationship blossomed, Severus's bitterness only deepened.
You won.
Of war, prophecies, and regret.
Quentin, that bloody owl's trashed half the studio.
Fizbert has just delivered an urgent communication from the Ministry of Magic, with his usual complete lack of grace. The Muggle HBO adaptation of the most important wizarding events is approaching. Every wizard, witch, muggle, and squib must be prepared. See to it with Spellbuzz, my dear colleague Francesca Williams' show, right here on this channel.
Welcome, wizards, witches, muggles, and squibs.
She's been covering every update, every theory, every casting announcement on the HBO series with a dedication that I, as a wizard, can only deeply respect. Go watch her, go support her, something big is coming, and she will make sure you are ready for it. Fizbert has done his part, now do yours.
That feathery menace.
The years at Hogwarts came to an end, and a new chapter awaited the young witches and wizards. The First Wizarding War was in full swing, and soon, everyone in the magical community would have to make their choice. As expected, Severus chose the path toward darkness, marking the beginning of his descent into Voldemort's ranks. He was branded with the Dark Mark, officially becoming a Death Eater. Meanwhile, Lily and James, now fully immersed in the war as members of the Order of the Phoenix, found solace in each other. Their bond, forged in the midst of the war, blossomed into love, and they married in a quiet ceremony. Not long after, their joy was complete with the birth of a son, Harry. Although Severus's actions as a Death Eater remain largely shrouded in mystery, it's clear that he quickly rose to prominence within Voldemort's inner circle. His most pivotal moment came when he unknowingly provided the Dark Lord with a piece of crucial information, one that would ultimately change the course of the war and the fate of all involved. Sybil Trelawney, just over 20 and desperately seeking employment, encountered Albus Dumbledore in Hogsmeade at the Hogshead Inn, where she was residing in hopes of securing the position of Professor of Divination at Hogwarts. Although Dumbledore had no intention of continuing the subject at the school, he decided to offer her a chance due to her lineage. Unfortunately, Sybil demonstrated a complete lack of talent in the art of divination, prompting Dumbledore to decline her request. Yet, against all odds, she entered a genuine trance at that moment and made a fateful prophecy.
The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the 7th month dies, and the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal. But he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord will be born as the 7th month dies.
That day, Severus found himself at the Hogshead Inn and overheard only part of the prophecy before Aberforth Dumbledore caught him eavesdropping and promptly threw him out.
Get out.
The Death Eater wasted no time in informing Voldemort, who became immediately obsessed with the idea of preventing what had been foretold. At that time, 2 infants could have been the subject of the prophecy: Harry Potter, the half-blood son of James and Lily Potter, and Neville Longbottom, the pure blood son of Frank and Alice Longbottom. Both families had sought to thwart Voldemort 3 times and were members of the Order of the Phoenix. Both children were born at the end of July. But which one?
The boy.
After much contemplation,
It has to be
Voldemort made the mistake
Potter.
of choosing young Potter. Severus knew all too well what that would mean.
It can't be.
Lily would die, and her son along with her. This couldn't happen. It must not happen. Despite the darkness of those final years, Severus had never truly let go of his love for that smiling girl with the red hair, the only person in the world who had ever been able to bring light into his gray, dreary sky. Severus begged Voldemort to spare her, and the Dark Lord reluctantly agreed.
I beg you.
However, knowing that he could not trust anyone else to protect Lily, especially someone as capricious as Voldemort, who might change his mind on a whim, and understanding that Lily would likely fight to the death to protect her child, Severus made his choice. He decided to abandon the Dark Lord for good and went to Albus Dumbledore, desperate to ask for his help in saving her. He pleaded with him to hide Lily, along with her husband and son, if he had to. The old wizard agreed, but insisted that Severus serve him as a spy among the Death Eaters. Despite Dumbledore's best efforts to protect the Potters, Peter Pettigrew, one of James's closest friends, betrayed them by tipping off their location. On the night of October 31st, he arrived at Godric's Hollow and cast the killing curse first on James, then on Lily, who bravely shielded her son. Yet, despite the tragic loss, it was Lily's sacrifice and indirectly Severus's actions that led to the Dark Lord's downfall. Severus's plea had allowed Lily to make the ultimate choice, to die for Harry. This act of selflessness ensured that the curse backfired, leaving her son with the means to survive, while Voldemort's body was destroyed, paving the way for his eventual defeat. After Lily's death, Snape was consumed by grief, his sorrow so deep that he wished for nothing more than to join her in death. The world felt empty, and the weight of his decisions crushed him. But Dumbledore, seeing the fragile state Snape was in, implored him to focus on something greater than his pain.
Severus,
Harry's safety.
please.
It was the least Snape could do in honor of Lily's memory. At first, Snape was reluctant, convinced that the danger had passed. With the Dark Lord vanquished, he thought surely the threat was over. But Dumbledore knew better. He warned Severus that Voldemort's fall was not the end. The Dark Lord would return, and when he did, everyone, especially the boy, would be in grave danger. Reluctantly, Snape understood. Harry's fate, and perhaps the entire wizarding world's, rested on a thread, and he had a role to play in keeping that thread from snapping. So Severus spent the rest of his life protecting Lily's child, Harry Potter, who was often said to strongly resemble James. Distrusted by those on Albus Dumbledore's side for his past as a Death Eater, and hated by his former allies, he became a silent guardian, his loyalty to Lily and her son unwavering, even as he remained a man torn between two worlds, never fully accepted by either, but bound by a sense of duty to protect the boy who carried her legacy.
Of vengeance, vaults, and threats.
The war was over. The Dark Lord had fallen, and the wizarding world had returned to what Severus, in some distant recess of memory, had once known as normality. All those sickly, ingratiating smiles, eager to reclaim the time that had been lost. Everyone with a reason to be grateful for their own existence. And yet, why was it so difficult for him to imagine anything of the sort? Alive, yes, but without her. If nothing else, those early years as potions master at Hogwarts offered at least some small satisfaction. A role Dumbledore had offered him, perhaps to keep his thoughts occupied, though it was the defense against the dark arts chair that he truly wanted. From the very first lesson, it became clear that Professor Snape had no interest in being liked. Quite the opposite, in fact. Cruel, cold, and entirely without patience for mediocrity. He was in many ways everything he had never been permitted to be during his own years as a student. Gryffindors, in particular, received the sharpest edge of his attention. The red of their robes carried associations he had spent years trying to bury and had never quite managed to. Whether consciously or not, Snape had become a man shaped by years of powerlessness, and the classroom was the one place in the world where that dynamic no longer applied. Students feared him, and there was something in that fear, something he would never have named aloud, that attenuated in its own perverse way the daily torment of his existence. A fairly effective opiate, all things considered. The years passed, and the first signs of a latent darkness, one that was readying itself to return, grew more apparent to Severus with each passing day. It began, as many dark things do at Hogwarts, with whispers. Strange disturbances moved through the castle, corridors inexplicably frozen, students found in states that no ordinary spell could account for. The cursed vaults, those legendary hidden chambers that most of the wizarding world had long since dismissed as folklore, had been unsealed. Snape remembered the legend well. He had first heard of it as a student, when he had discovered that insufferable Gryffindor, Patricia Rakepick, obsessively investigating the vaults. And now, here was the deeply unsettling coincidence. Rakepick had returned to Hogwarts, after all these years, in the role of defense against the dark arts professor. A position Snape had wanted for years. One he considered rightfully his, and that Dumbledore had declined to give him year after year, for reasons the old wizard kept characteristically close to his chest. When Rakepick's name was announced, the insult carried a particular edge. He had known her as a student. He remembered precisely the nature of her ambitions. Ambitions of that particular nature do not simply disappear with age. They mature. He watched her carefully as the weeks passed. Students admired her. Colleagues trusted her. And yet something beneath the surface of her conduct resisted easy explanation. She guided certain students toward the vaults, with the patience of someone who already knew where the path led. She asked the right things too precisely. What followed confirmed everything Snape had suspected. The witch, it eventually emerged, was a member of a shadowed organization known only as R, a group whose obsession centered on the crown of Noemi, an artifact said to grant its wielder the ability to project thoughts and memories directly into the minds of others. Hogwarts and everyone within it had been her proving ground from the beginning. In the end, it was her own students who stopped her, armed with the very skills she had spent imparting to them. Rakepick was sent to Azkaban. The organization dissolved into silence. The vaults were sealed once more. And so, once again, a quiet normality had returned to the castle. For everyone, it seemed, but Severus Snape Of that by now, he was absolutely certain. There were darker things coming, the kind that did not dissolve quietly and did not stay sealed.
Of potion, memories, and green eyes.
It was the 1st of September, 1991. The Hogwarts Express arrived at Hogsmeade Station, carrying, among its passengers, a boy Severus Snape had been waiting to meet for 10 years. A child who, in truth, he perhaps feared more than anything else.
I'm Harry.
Harry Potter.
Harry Potter.
11 years old, a pair of glasses and, by all accounts, the spitting image of his father James.
Just like James.
The same dark, untidy hair. The same insolent, easy confidence that seemed impossible not to notice. Snape had prepared himself, or believed he had, because the boy had his mother's eyes. Green. Precisely, unmistakably green.
Special, like me.
From the first potions lesson, Snape made his position clear. He questioned the boy sharply, publicly, with a deliberate precision designed to unsettle rather than illuminate.
Not Harry.
It was not entirely about Harry. It was about what Harry represented. The life that had continued without Lily. The war that had taken her and spared everyone else. The boy who carried her eyes in a face that belonged to James Potter. But beneath the cruelty of those early lessons, something else was already in motion. Quirinus Quirrell had returned from his sabbatical abroad, diminished, nervous, and wearing a turban. He refused to explain. Snape recognized the particular quality of fear that Quirrell carried, the kind that comes from living in proximity to darkness, a sensation he had not felt since the days when he himself had worn a Death Eater's mask. At the edge of it all was the unmistakable suggestion that Voldemort, diminished, bodiless, clinging to existence, was somewhere inside the castle. While Quirrell maneuvered toward the Philosopher's Stone, Snape worked quietly against him, monitoring his movements, keeping the boy alive without the boy ever knowing he was being kept alive.
Snape.
Harry Potter, for his part, had decided that Snape was the villain of the piece. And perhaps Snape had neither the inclination nor the luxury of correcting him. In the end, it was Harry himself who confronted Quirrell beneath the trapdoor and survived once again. Voldemort's fragment fled the dying body and vanished once more into whatever dark margin of existence it had been occupying. The school year ended. Students boarded the train home. Snape remained in his office in the dungeons and allowed himself, briefly, the acknowledgement that the boy was still alive, that Lily's son had made it through his first year. The past, as Severus had long since learned, had a talent for torment that would have put the most mischievous poltergeist to shame. And so, 2 years later, it came knocking at Hogwarts' doors once more, this time in the form of a name he had not heard in some time. Sirius Black. The most dangerous man in Wizarding Britain, they said. The only person ever to escape Azkaban. A mass murderer. And, once upon a time, James Potter's closest friend, which meant, by extension, one of the architects of Snape's most miserable years at Hogwarts. A new defense against the dark arts professor was appointed. Remus Lupin, another marauder, another ghost from a past Snape had never quite managed to bury. He did not trust Lupin, not because of anything the man had done, but because of what he was. A werewolf, whose entire presence at Hogwarts was, in Snape's view, a security risk dressed in shabby robes and a polite manner. He brewed Lupin's wolfsbane potion without being asked, and delivered it each month with the warmth of a man handing over evidence at a trial. Meanwhile, Snape watched Black's case with the obsessive attention of someone with personal stakes in the outcome. He remembered the shrieking shack, the night Black had sent him crawling toward a werewolf as a joke, the night James Potter had pulled him back at the last moment, a debt Snape had spent years resenting, precisely because he could never fully dismiss it. When Black was finally cornered inside Hogwarts itself, Snape arrived to find a revelation that dismantled everything. Peter Pettigrew was alive. He had been hiding as Ron Weasley's rat for 12 years. It was Pettigrew who had betrayed the Potters. Black was innocent. Snape did not believe it. Or rather, he believed it, and rejected it simultaneously, which was not an entirely rational position, but was, under the circumstances, a profoundly human one. Sirius Black, innocent, the man whose guilt had been, in some private corner of his mind, one of the few satisfying certainties the world had offered him. In the chaos that followed, Pettigrew escaped. Black fled on a hippogriff. Lupin resigned, and Snape was left with the particular, bitter frustration of a man who has been robbed of a conclusion he had been waiting for since adolescence.
Of lies, sacrifice, and silver dough.
Another year passed before things finally collapsed, swallowed by the darkness. A burning sensation, sharp and unmistakable, one he had not felt since the war. The dark mark on his forearm had reawakened. The night Voldemort returned, the night Harry Potter emerged from the Triwizard Tournament's maze, clutching the body of Cedric Diggory, Snape felt it before he really understood it. When Dumbledore summoned him that same night, he asked him to do what both of them had always known this arrangement would eventually require: to return to Voldemort, to claim he had never truly abandoned the cause, to become again what he had spent 14 years pretending not to be. What followed were years of extraordinary and exhausting duplicity. By day, Potions Master at Hogwarts, member of the Order of the Phoenix. By night, a seat at Voldemort's table, feeding Dumbledore information, carefully, selectively, always calculating how much could be passed along without compromising his position. Dumbledore also sent Harry to Snape for occlumency lessons, the art of sealing one's mind against external intrusion. Not that the Potions Master would accept the assignment with any particular grace, though perhaps training that insufferable boy was a reasonable excuse to make things difficult for him. The lessons were, by any measure, a disaster. And then came the evening Potter reached into Snape's pencil and witnessed a fragment of memory Snape had never intended anyone to see. The afternoon by the Black Lake, 5th year, the word Mudblood spoken in front of Lily's face. Snape ended the lessons immediately. Some things were not available for Harry Potter's consumption, regardless of what Dumbledore wanted. By the 6th year, Draco Malfoy arrived at Hogwarts carrying a task assigned by Voldemort himself: to kill Albus Dumbledore. His mother Narcissa came to Snape at Spinner's End, desperate and frightened, compelling him to make an unbreakable vow to protect Draco and, if the boy failed, to carry out the act himself. But Dumbledore was already dying. A curse contracted earlier that year was spreading through him, contained but fatal. He told Snape directly, with the calm of a man who has made his peace with something and expects others to do the same. Severus was to kill him, on their terms, at their chosen moment. It would spare Draco from becoming a murderer and cement Snape's position within Voldemort's inner circle. He carried that knowledge through the entire 6th year. When the night arrived, Death Eaters inside the castle, Draco pale and shaking and unable to finish what he had started, Snape walked onto the astronomy tower and did what he had promised. The green light, the old man falling. He wondered what Lily would have thought, whether she could have truly understood the weight of his sacrifice. Perhaps it was better not to know the answer. And there was one final irony, bitter and precise. That very year, Severus had finally been given the defense against the dark arts position he had wanted for so long. The chair that had, once again, just lost its new teacher. With Dumbledore dead and Voldemort's grip on the wizarding world tightening by the day, Severus Snape was appointed headmaster of Hogwarts. The announcement was received, predictably, with the horror and contempt of students and staff alike. The Carrow siblings, Amicus and Alecto, Death Eaters of the blunt, enthusiastic variety, were installed as professors, granted authority over discipline, and given license to inflict punishments that had no place inside a school. An incontrovertible, suffocating grip of powerlessness coiled around his tongue and his wand. He was, in those months, perhaps the loneliest he had ever been, and loneliness, for Severus Snape, had always set a considerable bar. Then Harry Potter returned to Hogwarts, and with him, the inevitable drawing closer of what Snape felt to be the end of this chapter, the end of the war. For better or worse, the prophecy would perform its final act. Voldemort or Harry Potter, only one of them would prevail, and Severus would use whatever remained of himself to ensure that all those years and all that pain had not been wasted. That night, the castle erupted into battle, and Snape slipped away to the Shrieking Shack, where Voldemort had summoned him. The Dark Lord had convinced himself that the Elder Wand, the most powerful wand ever made, taken from Dumbledore's tomb, was not fully answering to him. He believed its allegiance still belonged to Snape, who had killed its previous master. The logic was clean from Voldemort's perspective. The solution, equally so. He set Nagini on him and left. Severus lay on the floor of the Shrieking Shack, bleeding, the seconds contracting around him with the particular clarity that arrives when the body understands what the mind has not yet accepted. Harry found him there, and with what remained of his strength, he pressed his memories into the boy's hands. Tears, silvery and dense with everything he had never been able to say aloud, and looked at him one last time. He was not seeing James Potter's face. There were only his eyes, green, precisely, unmistakably green. The eyes of the woman he had loved more than anything else in his wretched and insignificant existence. Severus Snape died on the 2nd of May, 1998, on the floor of the place where, as a boy, he had first understood what a werewolf was. The wizarding world would not know, for some time, what he had actually been. Harry would go to the pensive, watch the memories, and understand, finally, fully, the shape of the life that had been lived in silence on his behalf. Dumbledore had once asked Snape, years earlier, whether his protective feelings toward Harry had endured all that time. Snape had cast his Patronus in response, a silver doe, luminous and quiet, moving through the darkness before fading from sight. A Patronus that carried the same form as that of the woman he had loved and had never stopped loving. Always, he had said. It was, in the end, the only word that mattered. In the months that followed the Battle of Hogwarts, Harry Potter made a single request of the new headmistress, Minerva McGonagall, that the portrait of Severus Snape be hung in her office, alongside those of every headmaster who had come before him. McGonagall agreed. It was perhaps the most eloquent act of posthumous justice the wizarding world had seen in some time. Years later, Harry named his second son, Albus Severus, two names belonging to two men who had shaped the course of a war from the shadows, and whose courage had made all the difference. Severus Snape never sought recognition. He would not have known what to do with it, but in a child's name and in a portrait hanging quietly on a stone wall, something of him endured, something that the darkness had never quite managed to extinguish.
Thank you, Severus.
And so, my dear adventurers, Severus Snape, a man who was never truly a hero in his own eyes and never truly a villain in ours. He loved in silence, he protected in secret, and he died as he had lived, misunderstood until the very last moment. Always. Quentin Penguin never cries. I bid you farewell, my dear wizards, witches, muggles, and squibs. I am, as always, your charming wizard, Quentin Penguin. Until the next dark and tantalizing episode.